Hey, so I've been working on a different video, but I happened to pop on Netflix earlier today and saw that there's a brand new show called City of Ghosts, and it had enough to draw me in. I ended up watching the whole thing just right away. It's not that long, I think it's 6 episodes of about 20 minutes each, and I wanted to talk about it real quick. But to give you the setup, it's a hybrid documentary and animation series from creator Elizabeth Ito, who worked on Phineas and Ferb and Adventure Time and a bunch of other great animated stuff, and she grew up in LA. This show is very much a look into different communities in LA, and very specifically it focuses on communities that are, we'll just say, non-white communities for the most part. These also happen to be neighborhoods that don't tend to be featured in a lot of movies or documentaries or just coverage of Los Angeles in general. And as someone who lives in LA and has lived in LA for a little bit, I thought it would be an interesting concept and that I would maybe recognize some landmarks and things like that. Obviously, it has ties in a few different ways to a handful of different series. For one, it has obvious points of comparison with The Midnight Gospel, which is a show that I've talked about previously, and I've made my thoughts on it very clear, but the dialogue is mostly real-life interview stuff, and then they just put some fun, colorful animations along to those conversations. I also saw parallels with Creature Comforts, which is another Aardman animation project where they just interviewed real people around the UK and animated them as different kinds of animals. And it's really interesting to get a comedy out of just real people talking. I also saw a few similarities to High Maintenance, the very famous, successful web series that then got purchased by HBO, and I think it's still running as far as I know. But just in the fact that it's very short form stories that try to get into just specific life stuff from people in very different situations just within a specific geographical space. I didn't know up front that it was about interviewing real life people in neighborhoods around LA, so I just thought that was a delightful little spin on the idea in general. It does use, for the most part, real backgrounds that are just still photos, and sometimes they're still photos that have been painted over, and then they'll impose the character models, the 3D character models, on top of those images and add little bits of color and flair. It's not an animation style or premise that I tend to really like all that much. I think it was a really just smart and appropriate choice to do this for a show that happens to be about exploring real life neighborhoods, because you really do get a good sense of place. And in particular, I definitely really appreciated the lighting that just immediately evokes LA to me. I need to mention that in terms of intended audience, it does skew pretty darn young. It's probably meant for kids around the age of the kid characters in the show, and I would say that's anywhere between like 7 and 10. And I forgot to say too, City of Ghosts, that's the whole title and everything, but the concept is that these kids their reason for talking to all these different people around LA is that all these people have apparently been seeing a ghost, or they're worried that there's a ghost somewhere in their life, which I think is a fun little idea and makes a little bit more, that surface level story, a little bit more interesting, so that kids would have an interest in it as opposed to thinking, oh, this is going to be interviews with boring adults. As soon as we start talking about real estate in Los Angeles, or just communities in Los Angeles, especially non-white communities throughout the ages, there's a lot of baggage there, to put it very lightly. There is a very long history of just people getting kicked out and moved around for the sake of convenience or for all sorts of awful reasons. This is a very delicate handling of those topics, and even kind of dipping into the topic of gentrification without making it inaccessible to younger viewers. Some of my favorite episodes were 2 and 3. 2 is all about Venice and skate culture in Venice, especially for kids. Episode 3 is about a woman who runs a poetry class for kids. That felt especially fun for me because I used to work at a place that was kind of a writer's workshop for young kids, and it was always just so great to see them put something together and perform and feel really proud of the work, and just see them engaged in something that they might not be doing normally. And in general, yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. It is a very casual show. It's very low stress and relaxed. You can tell that all the interviews are very natural, and each one is just a little tiny window into a neighborhood, the lives of a few people who live there. And honestly, honestly, outside of that, I don't have too much else to share about it. I am intrigued by just the originality of the concept overall. I think it's actually it's exploring the idea of community in a time where the traditional meaning of the term has sort of been superseded by different online communities and more distant forms of communication, as opposed to communicating with people you happen to live real close to. What's here already is pretty fascinating and a lot of fun to go through, and I also think there's tons of potential left. I don't know if they're planning to do more, if they're planning to expand it to other locations or anything like that, but I would be totally on board. I can't say 100% that this is a show that 20 and 30 somethings would really click with and really like to binge all at once, but definitely younger kids for sure. I think it would be fun. I like seeing the designs of the ghosts in particular. It's a lot of fun. They kind of reminded me of the Cloud people in Adventure Time. Just in general, just impressed that something this different and something this specific got produced and wound up on Netflix. So if it sounds like your deal, go ahead and check it out. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by.